Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and it's time to cover all the crowdfunding projects for November, Kickstarter and Gamefound alike, just those two, at least for now, but going through a whole lot of campaigns, like 25, 30 plus campaigns, something like that. There's still a lot of stuff to come. If you don't really know the way Kickstarter crowdfunding tends to work, is generally towards the second half of November and then into December and the first half of January, you tend to see a bit of a slowdown. Not always a huge slowdown, but definitely enough of a slowdown because projects tend to be wary of the fact that when they launch around the holiday season, you're competing with holiday dollars, with Christmas dollars, with Black Friday dollars, and that's never a great reason to say, hey, you know this $200 game you can buy? Now you have to choose. And so less projects do tend to launch around there, although looking at the current lineup for what I have right now, it doesn't look like there's less. But as usual, as we go into this, starting off, we have Shelf Clutter. I always recommend Shelf Clutter because I do these once a month and he does these every single week. In general, his information is more accurate than mine. In general, he has weekly data in general, so he's always up to he's up to date on the newest or whatever changes have been made, whatever things have been pushed off. And at least in the past month, we're seeing more and more projects that are being pushed off, adjusted, changed to suit the Kickstarter landscape. And so he has that weekly information. And then also he tends to cover more of the smaller campaigns as well. In order to keep this video at a somewhat manageable length, I don't go into every single project. I try to focus on the bigger ones. So if you want that information, go ahead and check them out. And if you are a publisher and you want to see information there, you can go ahead and there's a link in the form down below. You can apply and put your projects in so that you get listed in the next month's video when we cover that. And so, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start off with the Elder Scrolls, the Skyrim, the board game. This is coming November 2nd. The first few over here are going to be November 2nd. And this is Elder Scrolls. This is over on Gamefound. And it's Skyrim the board game. I will be talking about this. I will have coverage of it. Not physical coverage, unfortunately, because they didn't send out any physical copies. I believe even they don't have a physical copy. It's just purely TTS right now. Everything's in TTS. But overall, I haven't a chance to go through this. Myself, a bunch of other content creators haven't a chance to go through the TTS play. I believe you'll be able to have access to it as well. I'm not certain. But effectively, it's Skyrim. It's going to have you going around the map, encountering different adventures, choosing how you progress, trying to deal with your main quests and your personal quests as you try to figure out your monster encounters, leveling up your characters. It's basically just an RPG-esque style game as you level up your character and engage in the world around you, the events around you, and the combats around you as you go through Skyrim, the board game. That's going to be November 2nd. Then we have Jiangnan Life of Gentry from Amadeus Game Design. This is a worker placement, area control, action tile drafting, and bag building board game. I'm reading it straight from the page. This is one that I believe Jeremy Howard has his hands on this one already and has been talking about it. I believe they've said it's their heaviest game yet, so if you want to find out more information, this will be November 2nd as well. Currently 632 people following the page. You can be added to that list. And in general, by the way, links to everything in the description down below. Next up, we have Trinity of Reign, another November 2nd date. This one is area control style game with building out your own unique city. So if I scroll down over here, they have something over here. They have this over here. Here we go. Build your individual medieval capital. One of the things that makes this game different is you are literally building out your own unique city. Now, if you've ever played Kingsburg, it very much has that kind of feel to it, as you have different physical sculptures, as well as different abilities correlating to the sculptures, and you're choosing how you build out your city. Kingsburg has this with these rows of buildings you just place little tokens on. This one's taking a much more physically based approach, and then combine that with area control and, with spells, recruiting armies, wealth, all that stuff you'd find in a game like that. That's effectively what Trinity of Reign is bringing to the table. Again, November 2nd. We have two more November 2nds. We have Titania Ascending. This is going to be coming to you from XYZ Game Labs. Titania Ascending is a cooperative roll and write game, so if you want a game that has the hints of cartographers in the style of rolling different, not rolling, and drawing different cards, or drawing different symbols onto the areas of your board as you go through two phases of the game. You're first going to be trying to track down different elements that have to go in certain spots, and the second phase you're trying to fully shade in these squares. So it's two different phases as you build out the map and track things down, and then the second round of the game you're trying to close all those things out as you utilize and capitalize on different events, different special symbols, but you're all working cooperatively together to both unlock the powers you have as you go through the game, as well as to then cash those powers in to ensure that no one is left stalling, to ensure that you're not all passing and are completely stuck in the game. That's Titania Ascending coming November 2nd. And then lastly, we have a reboot campaign from Greenbrier Games. And they're combining two of their past campaigns, two that I wouldn't really normally pair up. We have Yashima and we have Ninja Dice. Yashima is going to be a miniature-based card crafting system, sort of, to a degree. You have different cards, a little bit of miniatures behind that, and that's they had a whole line of games around that, and that's being brought back to Kickstarter. And November 2nd, if you back in the first 48 hours, you get a free pin, all that. And then Ninja Dice is a dice rolling game. Two totally different styles games. Here we go. Card-driven miniatures game, where each player customizes their chosen character and engage in player versus player combat. And then we have Ninja Dice, which is a push your luck dice game. Two totally different genres. I think Ninja Dice came with these metal coins and whatnot. But yeah, if you want to get in on these, they are having the reboot campaign. One thing I am curious on is I'm curious what they're bringing back to the table, because in general, in terms of Kickstarter rules, you have to be making something new. You can't just be reprinting. Which is why sometimes you see those, hey, we're making a soundtrack campaigns where nobody really cares about the soundtrack, they're just in it for the board game. But Kickstarter rules have generally had, unless they've changed things, it's generally been that you have to make something new. You could relaunch 97% of the old stuff, as long as you have that 3%, look at this new expansion we're bringing to the table, or a soundtrack, or any of that. Then moving on to November 3rd, we have Infinity Deathmatch Tag Raid. This is coming to you from Corvus Belli. They have a game that is still on my shelf underneath me, Ariste, which is a game that I still haven't played, have heard incredibly good things about. I have a whole bunch of content for it, have not played that miniature skirmish game, and this one is bringing you, well, it's bringing you as a 2 to 4 player deathmatch game, so a little bit of degree of what do you call battle royale, although I don't know how that's going to be implemented in the game. They have gigantic beasts. You should check out the videos. They have a video showing you this gigantic beast being unlocked. Do I want to open it now? I don't want to mess with the video, but this guy over here, if you go ahead and look into it, this guy looks gigantic. They're bringing you these giant miniatures next to smaller miniatures in this team-based battle royale, not team-based, in this battle royale deathmatch style combat thing. Miniatures are bound to be good. Scenery already looks good. As far as the game itself, I know nothing about the actual gameplay past, well, what we're seeing over here. Then moving on to November 4th, we have Wild Realms over on Gamefound. This is a rally your animals, discover the 4 realms, raise your animal kingdoms. Wild Realms is bringing you, you're crafting out these beasts, you're utilizing these beasts in the set collection game with unique animals and all that, and not a lot of information yet on the page about the game, but this is over on Gamefound, and again, you can go ahead and follow it. If you follow the campaign, you'll get the legendary booster pack for free with your pledge. And then next up, this next one's going to be November 8th, and then we have a whole bunch coming November 9th. November 8th is Starfighters Rapid Fire, a real-time dice placement game. This is coming to you from Alley Cat Games. They have a whole bunch. They have the Dice Hospital. They have, recently they had a theme park. They had Dice Theme Park. They have a whole bunch of games. They did Tinner's Trail. They did the Dungeon. They just had a Dungeon Roll and Write game. And now they have Starfighters Rapid Fire, which is a real-time dice placement game. So I don't know much about the gameplay past the real-time dice placement. They have a bit more information on the website. Not a lot yet, but this will coming November 8th, so I'll be keeping my eyes peeled because I tend to be pulled in by their games. They had one recently, what was the one with the paintings? They had a painting one that I can't remember the name of it, but their games tend to be very well made, very beautifully produced, lots of stuff going on, simple yet accessible. So Starfighters from Alley Cat Games. Then we have Gartenbau. This is going to be November 9th, and we have a whole bunch of these coming November 9th. This is Gartenbau is a relaunch from 25th Century Games. This was on Kickstarter, unfortunately canceled. It had a very expensive price point, and again, we've talked about this in other videos. Things are getting more expensive, so it is complicated to determine exactly what the reasonable price point is because MSRPs are rising across the board. So something I would have looked at, 6 months ago and said, hey, that's way too expensive, it'll be much cheaper in retail. Those conversations are more complicated and still more of a guessing game. That said, Gartenbau has, while it had like a box full of 5 pounds full of cardboard tiles, it still seemed to have an expensive price point for what it's bringing to the table. I don't know what they're changing as far as the game, as far as the price point, or what they're doing at all about the Kickstarter, but this one is a tile placement game, and we'll see what happens when it launches November 9th. Then we have Hegemony, Lead Your Class to Victory. This is coming to you from the Hegemony Project. I don't know the Hegemony Project games. Yeah, this is one where I did cover this one. I don't know if my video is up before or after. My video is not coming up yet. I already filmed my video. It's not actually up yet. You'll see it before the Kickstarter goes live. But this is an asymmetric class-based game. It's a game where you'll have the lower class, the middle class, you'll have the working class, you'll have the capitalist class, and then you'll have the state. So you have 4 different factions. I repeated one there twice, which is why I said 5 factions. But you have 4 different factions in the game, each of them dealing with the same universe, but bringing heavily asymmetric gameplay to the table. And they really do intertwine. This is one of those things one of these conversations we've had over the past year or two, whatever it is the nature of games like Root, where the asymmetry melds together in ways that you need to know what everyone's doing in order to have a fighting chance of victory. And then games like Merchant's Cove, which bring asymmetry to the table, but a much lighter asymmetry, one where you only have to know what your own faction is doing. Hegemony is very much the former. Hegemony is bringing you heavy asymmetry in the sense that you can play the game just knowing what your own faction is doing, but then you won't understand how the other factions are intertwining with you. You're all playing in the same economy. You're dealing with exports, with immigrants, with immigration, with immigration, with taxes. You're all dealing in the same universe. Do you want free healthcare? Do you not? Do you want free education? Do you not? All these conversations are happening as you vote, as you work together, as you employ each other's workers, as you build your own factories and businesses. All those things are happening, and you have to understand what everyone is doing in order to have a shot. This is a heavy game, but a very rewarding one at the same time. This is Hegemony: Lead Your Class to Victory, November 9th. Then we have this one. We don't really have a full pre-launch page, and I think this date is still November 9th, but we'll see. This is Ancient Blood, a prequel to the Order of the Vampire Hunters. The Order of the Vampire Hunters from Darkgate Games was a Kickstarter quite some time ago. They actually had a relaunch with a soundtrack, if I recall correctly. So one of those things, but the Ancient Blood is a different game. It has some degrees of some overlap with some of the systems, but for the most part, it's a very different experience. If you didn't like the Order of the Vampire Hunters, you may still like the Ancient Blood, and vice versa. If you loved Order of the Vampire Hunters, you may not like Ancient Blood. It is a different game. It's a prequel in the same universe. The art style of the characters does very much look like they're going for a Bloodborne kind of aesthetic to the hunters, which doesn't bother me. Technically, the Order of the Vampire Hunters was quite some time ago. I actually don't know what was first as far as the video game or that game. Either way, the art looks gorgeous. King of Average already has an unboxing. The miniatures look great. You can take a look at those, which I think is good because Darkgate Games in particular, some of their more recent games have had amazing miniatures, whereas I think, if I recall correctly, the Order of the Vampire Hunters, the original, had just good miniatures. So they really have progressed as a company as far as their miniature production quality, which is not everything. The game being good is everything, but it's still nice to have good miniatures along the way. So this looks cool. I haven't looked into it heavily yet, but this is Ancient Blood, the Order of the Vampire Hunters. Next up, we have Megapulse. Megapulse coming November 9th. This is one of those that has been pushed off. This is coming to you from a Canadian company, from Orion Games, and this is a racing game. It's a racing combat-based game where you're playing simultaneously selecting and playing cards from your hand, and you have choices every single round, and you don't lose those choices. So you have these different choices. Do you want to drop bombs on the map? Do you want to shoot rockets? Do you want to speed up? Do you want to use your nitro? Do you want to store your nitro? All these different options you have that you can utilize every single turn. And so every round you're going to pick some of those cards, 2 cards specifically, to play them out, and then everyone's going to flip and resolve them in order, and then try to go ahead from there in order to figure out how you're going to move around the map and blow people up and try to basically win the race. You can choose different lengths of time, anywhere from 2+ laps or whatever it is. I guess you could have a 1-lap race, although it's probably on the short side, but you can have a 2 laps, 3 laps, 4 laps, whatever you need, as you try to figure out how to upgrade along the way, because you will be upgrading your hand by adding cards to your selection. So as you go through these different checkpoints, you'll earn power points that can be utilized to improve your deck, and then to go ahead and blast more people and shoot more people and do more of their racing things. This is Megapulse from Orion Games. Next up on November 9th, we have Clash of Deck. This is Season 2 of Clash of Deck. Clash of Deck is such an interesting one. The original Kickstarter unfortunately had to cancel. Then they had a subsequent Kickstarter where they offered basically like $3, including shipping. That was $3 total in order for you to get the starter set of Clash of Deck. And they successfully managed to sell like 13,000 of them or something like that because of the price point and because of what they're doing. They're basically just looking to cover their costs. Here you go. Here's 40, 50 cards, $3, all covered, all good, and now they're bringing Clash of Deck Season 2 to Kickstarter, which is fascinating because I'm curious what their pricing model is. They have to make money at some point. You don't make money on $3 decks of cards. The question on the table is, what's Season 2 going to look like? Was Season 1 basically an advertising campaign where they got 13,000 decks into the hands of people, and those people are now potentially going to back Season 2? Or was Season 1 something that doesn't work out well for them? Does it not convert people into Season 2 backers, where they're likely buying a lot more at a higher price point? I don't have any of the answers. I'm just very fascinated by what they did in Season 1 and how well that will work out for them long term. Next up, we have Hamlet from Mighty Boards. This is coming from David Cherkop. He's designer of a few games that I know and like, including Petrichor and others that I'm not thinking of this second. But Hamlet is very much a village building game, like it says over here. You're going to be working together with other players to build a village, although working together is the wrong term because ultimately there is only one winner. No, it's not semi-cooperative. It's not like you're sort of working together, but whatever. It's you're taking advantage of each other's, kind of to a certain degree like Hegemony, where you have this economy going on where you're building out workers, you're building out locations, but then I might build a location and then use some wood over there, but then I'll pay you for the wood, but I'll be able to use that wood and turn it into a higher, more processed boards, but then someone else is going to get points because I used their factory. You're interacting with others as you build out the village on the table, trying to ultimately get the most points yourself and figure out exactly where you land in that chain of production. It is a much lighter game than Hegemony, but not a light game, not in any sense of the words, but it's not like a heavily asymmetric game with different factions, much shorter rule set, much more accessible game, very much feels like a David Cherkop game in terms of what it's bringing to the table. This is Hamlet by Mighty Boards, coming of November 9th. Then from there we have one more. We have one more November 9th, which is, we have a lot more. We have one more for November 9th, which is Honeybuzz Fall Flavors, coming November 9th. And this is going to be a modular expansion to Honeybuzz, giving you 5 or 6 different modular approaches in terms of ways you can mix things together to modify your Honeybuzz experience, which is excellent because Honeybuzz is a game that I really liked. I covered it quite some time ago. I need to play it again. It's been a while, but, well, a while's relative. It's been a few months, but Honeybuzz is a game I really enjoyed, but wanted that extra degree of variety to make the gameplay different every single time. And so a modular approach to the expansions, assuming I like them all, is definitely one way to add increased variety as I go through the game. My favorite expansion from, that's not true, my favorite module from the expansions I've talked, from the modules they've announced, you can check it out on Board Game Geek, they have more information there. From the modules that they've talked about, my favorite one is the idea of retiring your workers, retiring your bees, where you can either have a party or send them off to work one last time before they retire. So I like that idea, both mechanically and thematically. I like the idea of retiring your workers. Then from there we have Resurgence, and this one I believe is coming November 10th. That might change. This is coming from Stan Kodonsky, who's done like a dozen games that I absolutely adore. He's done Rurik, which I think is incredible. He's done Endless Winter, which I love. He's done Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria, which is a great game. He's done a whole bunch of other great games that I'm not thinking of all of them offhand. He did Old West Impresario, he did Dice Hospital, a ton of games, a Lockup. Either way, he's bringing Resurgence to the table, and Resurgence has a whole lot of mechanics being combined. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures or art on the screen, but effectively, Resurgence is a game in which you both have worker placement, you have bag building, you have deck building, effectively, bag building, deck building, more bag building, and then you have a degree of blind, I don't know what the term for it is, secretly placing your pieces out before revealing them in order to try to get different bonuses. So a whole bunch of mechanics being worked together, and a board that you're working out. It has tableau building because you're building out a base. A whole lot of things being combined. I think Stan Kodonsky is an incredible designer who manages to combine things in ways that are unique and different every single time. One of the things I find fascinating about him is every single game of his that I've played has felt different. That's not true. That's 90% true. With one exception, every single game I've played of his that has felt very, very different. The only exception is Old West Impresario and Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria do have some small degree of overlap, but the rest of his games feel totally different. It's not like he's one of those designers who it feels like a Stan Kodonsky game. No, it doesn't. It's the different approach every single time, and I've generally liked that approach whenever I've played them. This is Resurgence. And by the way, this is his first time that he's doing a game under his own company. Half Kingdom Games is the name of his design company, so to speak. His previous games have all been done other companies in collaboration with other entities. This is the first time he's bringing his own Kickstarter, his own game to his own company, to Kickstarter. That's coming November 10th, and it's almost certainly worth paying attention to. Next up, we have Weather Machine, a game that feels like it's been pushed off 14 times because it has been pushed off 14 times. This is from Vital Lacerda. This is obviously hyped. I mean, if you look at the placeholder ratings, this is hilarious. If you look at the ratings on Board Game Geek, The reason it has a 9.2 is because you have people putting things like, oh, it's an 8, because an 8's the lowest I've ever rated a Vitalis Lacerda game. Once I play it, I'll change it. You have people doing the same thing with 9s, like, oh, well, most Vitalis Lacerda games are 9s or 10s, so I'm just going to give this a 9 and I'll update it later. We have people pre-rating the game based on their assumption that it will be another amazing Vitalis Lacerda game. And honestly, I don't even think that's unreasonable. It's a little unreasonable, but not that unreasonable. If somebody is consistently producing amazing experiences, as long as you're rating it based on the lowest. If you're rating it based on the average or the highest or what you expect it to be, then we start bordering in unfair territory. But take myself. I have never played a Stefan Feld game that I would rank lower than a 7. I think he has some, I just haven't played them. So for me, it would be a 7, 8, 9, or 10 in terms of Board Game Geek's rating scale, and so giving him a 7 because a 7 is the lowest, that would be reasonably fair. Although most of them, I would say, have been an 8 or above. There's sort of a few that have been a 7. Rialto was a 7 for me, but most of them are an 8 or above. So maybe I should just give every Stefan Feld game an 8 as a place. It really sounds unfair the more I talk about it. Don't do that. Don't mess with the ratings. Although this will start another conversation about Board Game Geek and the rating systems and how you can do what you want, but it's not a big deal. The point is, Weather Machine is coming to Kickstarter. Finally, it's coming to Kickstarter on November 11th, and it's going to do $1 million day one, because that's where we are right now, because there's been a lot of $1 million campaigns recently. Either way, add Weather Machine to the list. That will be another one. Next up we have Esopya, I think, which I don't know enough about this one, past the fact that it's a collectible card game. It reminds me of our Arkan Wars, in a sense that they have the collectible card games on this grid, not the first or the last one to do it. It's not just Arkan Wars. I mean, Arkan Wars has Summoner Wars, you have all these other games, but this is bringing you collectible, which means I am inherently less interested in it, because, I mean, the art looks nice, but I don't do collectible, so I'm not entirely sure what else is happening past that, but that's coming to Kickstarter on November 15th. Next up, November 16th, we have a Gamefound campaign. This is going to be Sammu-ramat Derrocar, 2 separate games with historical themes. We have I don't know much about the gameplay, unfortunately, but we have Sammu-ramat about Queen Sammu-ramat, the Queen in the Assyrian Empire. And then we have the game for Derrocar, which this one's hilarious because this is the 5 Presidents Week. This is a game based around a single week in which there were 5 different presidents in Argentina cycling around, and so a degree of political turmoil around this period of time as you vied to be the various presidents in this game. Again, gameplay information on both these games I don't know much about, but overall we'll see how they do. 2 different campaigns, always a challenge when you combine them together in a single thing, but you can go ahead and follow that over on Gamefound. Next up, we have a pop-up that got in the way. This is going to be Hero Realms. Hero Realms coming to Kickstarter November 16th. They're bringing Hero Realms Dungeons to Kickstarter. This is expanding and continuing the line of Hero Realms, which was, the second iteration upon Star Realms. Then we had Star Realms Frontiers. This is from Wise Wizard Games. This is the most popular line, I believe. I'm pretty sure Star Realms and Hero Realms are the most popular games. And come back to Kickstarter with more content. So if you want more content for your Hero Realms, I mean, this is one of those great deck builders. I really enjoy both these systems, Star Realms and Hero Realms. And Hero Realms Frontier, and Star Realms Frontiers, that's the one. But overall, yeah, that's coming to Kickstarter with more content for your Hero Realms game. Next up, we have 3 new Valeria Universe games. This is going to be, again, November 16th, and we have 3 different games. We have a trick-taking game, a roll-and-write game, and a tower defense game. And again, they're combining them all. Now, granted, I just said a second ago about Sammu-ramat and Derrocar, that combined games always have a bit of a struggle in terms of presenting their shared vision. I don't know if that's as true when you have a clear set like this. When you have a clear set of a clear set in the Valeria universe, granted the mechanics might be totally different, but the general art and stylings and Valerianess of everything. I mean, Daily Magic Games have basically built an entire company upon the Valeria universe. That's what they've done. They've just said, hey, Valeria universe, we're going to commit to that. I think they have like one other game that's outside the Valeria universe. Everything else is within the Valeria system, many of them being Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria, which is still my favorite game in their system. I like Shadow Kingdoms as well. I also like Margraves, but I don't know how many of them actually stay in my collection. I've gotten rid of quests, I've gotten rid of villagers, but Valeria, this new system over here of trick-taking, roll-and-write, and tower defense, I'm interested in all 3. I'm interested in roll-and-write for sure. It might be a horrible game. I don't know. I'll probably get it. I'm interested in tower defense. Again, might be a horrible game. I'll probably still get it. And then we have trick-taking, which is the least interesting to me, but I am curious to see what they do with trick-taking. Trick-taking has occasionally worked for me. More often than not, it's a genre that I don't particularly go for, but I am curious primarily because it's in the Valeria universe. Next up, We have Pathfinder Arena. This is coming November 23rd, and this is basically a skirmish version of Pathfinder. So bringing you from Paizo Games or Gyoshi Unity, this is bringing you Pathfinder, the card game that we've seen, the RPG, the whole universe that they have, and bringing you a miniature skirmish game. You can check it out on the website. I don't have the picture in front of me over here, but the board doesn't really. The board has an interesting. It has the. What's that style game? The Labyrinth original game where you basically push tiles in and you can navigate and adjust the arena by pushing tiles in one end and having them come out the other side. So it has that going on. The art style of the board doesn't appeal to me. Miniatures look cool. I don't know much about the actual gameplay past that Labyrinth style game, that Labyrinth style board, but we'll see over on November 23rd. Next up, and we're slowly making our way to the end here, we have Rampart Modular Terrain. This is going to be launching on, I believe, November 23rd as well. This is from Arkan Studios, and this is not a board game, in case you're wondering. It's not a board game. This is basically continuing Arkan in general. They have a few board games. They had, most recently, they had Master of the Universe. Before that, they had Wolfenstein. But more often than not, their Kickstarters or their crowdfunding campaigns are more often than not terrains. They've had a whole successful miniatures line. They have a successful modular terrain line, and this is their Rampart Modular Terrain, coming to Kickstarter November 23rd. And again, to everything, links down below. And then, on November 26th, we have Obscure War. November 26th, we're bringing Obscure War to Kickstarter. This is one that was pushed off, but supposedly this is not being pushed off again. I don't know anything about the actual game, unfortunately, on this game. I've tried looking into it. Some of the videos are in French, which makes it a little harder for me to understand them because I don't speak French. So, by a little harder, I mean they don't help me at all. But in case you're interested, and in case these things look interesting, it's coming to Kickstarter on October 26th. Next up, we have Harakiri Blades of Honor. This is coming November 30th over on Kickstarter. A free miniature, 48-hour early bird if you pop up there. That's true in most of these things, but not most. That's true in many of these things. It's worth subscribing or hitting the notify me because some of these things will have either follow bonuses if they're on Gamefound, or they have free extras for the 38 hours or 24 hours, different early bird options, so it's worth notifying if you have any interest whatsoever. But this is Harakiri Blades of Honor. It's going to be a cooperative game with miniatures and RPG elements and fighting baddies and all that. Looks very ambitious. The art looks amazing. The miniatures look amazing. We'll have a lot more information as the Kickstarter approaches. And then next up, one more on November 30th is going to be Rome Total War. Rome Total War, this is going to be over on Gamefound. They've started dropping information into the updates if you want to check those out. Again, they have a follow now for free gift. This is from PSC Games. Their last game was that giant, no, was it? Were they the ones who did the space game, the 4X space game? I cannot remember now. In my head, I think they did, but PSC Games is Blitzkrieg. PSC Games, they did Blitzkrieg. That's what they did. They're right over here on my shelf. They did Blitzkrieg, and they have Caesar coming out soon. Great games. I'm blanking who they were. But either way, this is Rome Total War, like I said, from the video game, one more of a giant line full of video games that we're seeing more and more converted over to board games. The video game space and the board game space are having a huge merge and overlap, and it's mostly happening over on crowdfunding of different Kickstarter, Gamefound, all of that. But this is Rome Total War. They have a few updates, a few videos, not a ton of information about the gameplay, past the unit-based approach, the dice, all that, not a ton of information just yet. And then we have two more at the end, which I don't have dates for yet. I believe they're both in November, but we'll see. We have Passengers, which is a hidden role game where you're going to be trying to putting different passengers onto boats and trying to ensure that the boats hit their destinations into the underworld or not. So you're trying to manage the spirits, manage the guests on the boats, and then utilize the abilities to tactically control who goes where while figuring out the players at the table that are trying to, well, act incorrectly against your own best interest. That's going to be Passengers, likely coming to Kickstarter in November, not totally certain yet. And then lastly, we have Call to Adventure's Epic Origins, the next game in the Call to Adventure series from Brotherwise Games. Again, I believe this is going to be a November Kickstarter, but I don't have a firm date for it yet. And that is everything we have so far. Like I said already, a lot of campaigns, a lot of things coming, and like I said in the beginning of the video, make sure to pay attention to Shelf Clutter because in general, the lists are always changing. New games are added every single day. Even just this video right here, the amount of games I added to this video, I added like 7 or 8 of these games in the last 2 days as things were updated. Things are constantly changing. New Kickstarters are being announced every single week. Dates are being pushed off or adjusted. Campaigns get canceled and relaunched. All those things are happening. So make sure to stay tuned to Shelf Clutter if you want those weekly updates of what's coming to Kickstarter. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, have a good one.